Krista, is this something that the defense can make a lot of hay out of? The idea that this case was evaluated and investigated back in 2012 through 2013, and they didn't think Stefanko was even involved. They never pointed the finger at her. He never certainly pointed the finger at her. Is this something that the defense can make a lot of hay out of, that the initial investigation didn't think Stefanko had anything to do with it?
Well, of course. Of course, yeah. I think that some of this might have to do with the fact that he was probably still a loyal husband at that time and probably did not want her to say much or if anything at all. And so he probably protected her then from intense scrutiny by the prosecution. So I think that there's an explanation for the lack of scrutiny. But I'm also curious as to why she wasn't initially a suspect as to being an accomplice rather to this crime, because there was a female that called in the pizza order to begin with. Was that never investigated at all? Did no one ever ask those questions?
Yeah, and we had the testimony today of Brittany Dunson, who said that there had been some interactions, or really negative interactions, between Stefanko and Biggs surrounding this kid. So really, it's surprising that they never went to her as a possible suspect, someone who might have made that call. Now, Chanley, I also understand that there was this sequestration order regarding witnesses. I was a little confused as to all that. Can you clarify to me what the judge was trying to accomplish there, and what she said about the witnesses not connecting with each other, not watching testimony, things of that nature?
Right. It's much like we would see at a regular trial, where the witnesses are held in a separate room away from the testimony. They can't hear each other's testimony so as to taint what they may say on the witness stand during their testimony. So because this is being live streamed and a lot of the witnesses will be testifying virtually, the judge wanted to make sure that she made that clear, that they cannot watch any live stream. They cannot watch anybody else's testimony. Now, there is an exception under Ohio law for the victims of the case, meaning the minor child in this case. Even though she is a witness for the prosecution, expected possibly to testify tomorrow, she can watch the live stream. We heard that again today, the judge making clear that you can watch the live stream, but your grandmother, Cindy Cobb, who is also a witness for the prosecution, cannot watch it. So don't talk to your grandmother about what you may see on the live stream, what you don't see. So again, a very strict rule to preserve really the integrity of a lot of the testimony moving forward.
Now, Christa Ramey, I know you have some experience dealing with the well-being of children involved in the legal process as such, and we do know that there's a minor child involved, just 7 years old at the time that all this was going on, now 15, going to testify. Tell me about some of the difficulties that you've come across dealing with young children like that, but not only just being the age of 15, but also trying to come up with these memories from being 7 years old. Often courts don't really like to accept the testimony of children that young, but yet maybe the fact that she's 15 now may help.
Well, you immediately think back to the McMartin trial back in the 80s. I mean, children are so impressionable that you can implant memories in them. If you do it properly. And so I think that sometimes it becomes very suspicious. But now we know a lot more about repressed memory, about fragmented memory. When you're dealing with trauma, you have to deal with it from a trauma-informed perspective when you're questioning a witness, when you're trying to get information from a witness, and even when you're cross-examining a witness that's a minor. You need to be more open-ended in your questioning as to not create a negative reaction or impact, which can also play a role in how the jury perceives you as the attorney, and it might have a negative impact on your case if you're not thoughtful in that way.
Yeah, one of the things that's coming out in this trial is just the idea that Chad Cobb was a monster, but I think some of the testimony we're hearing and going to hear is that Erica Stefanko was also not a very nice person. And I want to play a piece of tape here from, I believe it's Ashley Biggs' mom. Our own Chanley Painter did an interview with her. And I want to play this piece of tape because she's talking about Erica Stefanko and her supposed involvement in this event. And then we'll talk about that. Let's take a listen.
There's too much. I mean, who else would have picked up Chad from dropping the car off down in a cornfield in Wayne County but her? They found her behind the barn with all the kids and a money bag. So tell me, she's just gonna throw her life away. She already did that when she made the decision to go through with this, to buy that phone, to make that call. The day that I found out that they got her was the happiest day of my life. My daughter finally will get justice for this.
Shirley Painter, I wanted to ask you about, I noticed a tremendous amount of weight loss. We see the picture there from when Erica Stefanko was arrested to now, and she appears like almost like a different person. You can barely recognize her. Do we know, is there some health issue? Are there some diet issues? What's going on?
Michael, I missed the first part of your question. I didn't hear that part. You just repeat it real quick.
Sure, I will. So my question was, when I look at the video there, and when we see the video of when Erica was arrested, I noticed she's lost a tremendous amount of weight between then and the woman we see now in the courtroom. Can barely recognize her. Do we know if there's some kind of health issue? Is there some kind of diet issue going on? What's happening with that?
You know, I noticed the same thing today. I was in court all day in person and I could see her. I noticed the same kind of thing. And, you know, really a lot of defendants that we see who have spent any time in jail because of the stress of going to trial, I'm sure that factors into losing weight. But no clue as any health issues. As far as we know, Michael, I do know the very first day, last Friday of jury selection, her attorney it wasn't really a motion, but it was a concern that he raised in front of the judge, complaining about what she's being served to eat at the jail. He called it cat food, basically. And the judge did take it seriously, though, and she inquired, do you want to make sure, what is she being served to eat there at the jail? And the deputy in the courtroom said, no, actually, it's just topped up ham and whatnot. But so maybe that's an indication she doesn't like the food that she's being served to eat there at the jail.
Absolutely. We saw the same thing with the McMichaels in the Ahmaud Arbery case. I mean, they both lost a tremendous amount of weight. So maybe that stress and that food, which is not the greatest, is part of the issue. But Christa, let me come back to you, and I want to go back to this idea of a child going into court and helping them deal with the trauma. You know, initially, the minor child did not want to go into the courtroom. Part of her complaint was not the COVID issue, but the fact that she was afraid. I guess the relationship she had when she lived with her father and Erica Stefanko, the relationship with Erica Stefanko was not a very good one. And she still had fear 8 years later, from a 7-year-old child till now, still didn't even want to be in the same room with her. She changed her mind. Now she wants to be in the courtroom. And I think that is probably a choice that might have been motivated by the fact that she maybe has the courage now to face her, but also that she wants to sort of get rid of these demons. I know as someone who is trying to bring, let's say a prosecutor, trying to put this person on the stand, I think it's fraught with problems. I think you have to be very, very careful with a witness like that, don't you think?
I do. I think from the daughter's perspective, I think that it's very empowering to actually face the person that caused all this trauma to you, in this case, Ms. Stefanko. But I think on the flip side, as a prosecutor, you have to be very careful. I don't know that this is going to be the most powerful of witnesses. There's so many problems with what we know about her testimony. It's presumed that she remembers this phone call that was being made at almost midnight. And I wonder, one, why was she awake? And two, why would that imprint on a 7-year-old's brain? And if it had, why wasn't she talking about it? I almost wonder whether or not so many people around her in her life were talking about this memory, that she then adopted this memory for her own memory. And I think that it can become very problematic for the prosecution. So they have to be very careful with this witness.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just going to be fraught. It's like going to be a minefield for both the defense and the prosecution.